Welcome back to the Daily Dose. The show is brought to you by Give'emHellBrigham.com and by CougarSportsInsider.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. I'm Jeff Hansen. I'm happy to be back here with you for another week of the show. It's bye week. Tough opponent this week for BYU. Got to figure out a way to beat the bye week. But hey, right now, BYU is sitting at 4-1. And if we play that game of, well, if you would have told me 2 months ago that BYU would, we play that game, I think everybody's pretty pleased with BYU. Every BYU fan, that is pretty pleased with where BYU is at, pretty optimistic about the second half plus a game of the season, and pretty optimistic about where things are going for the program. So that's good. 4-1, great news for BYU. And I think the best news, unless, of course, you have a pessimistic outlook on the future, but I think the best news for BYU is they're 4-1, and they still haven't played their best football. It's not like BYU has peaked and they are playing better than anybody could have possibly expected them to play, and they're set for some regression. No, they're not playing particularly well, but they are fighting things out. They are gritting out wins, and that is something that Kalani Sitake's teams have struggled with historically under his tenure, is when they don't play well, generally BYU gets beat. But right now they're not playing well and they're still finding ways to win. That should give a lot of encouragement for the future for any BYU fan who's looking at this team, because there's still a lot of improvement to be made. BYU's best football is still ahead of them, and going into the schedule that suddenly looks like there are a lot more winnable games in the second half of the season than maybe we thought that there would be, I don't know, a couple of months ago. Texas Tech looks beatable. TCU, I mean, they just lost at home to West Virginia. Maybe they're a little bit more beatable than most BYU fans expected them to be. Iowa State, Oklahoma State. I mean, there's a realistic scenario here where BYU gets to 7 wins, 8 wins in the regular season. I mean, BYU, if they play well, if they execute a little bit better, that's kind of the ceiling right now. So things are looking great for BYU. I've been incredibly impressed with the way that they have fought and their ability to grind out wins. That is just such a unique trait that BYU has not had that they have this year that makes me excited for the future. So what have they done? What did they do against Cincinnati that really impressed me the most? They had a running game. It wasn't a great running game, but on the night, I think LJ Martin, after you factor in his runs for losses, I think he netted 66 rush yards. That's not great, but it's something, and it was a little bit north of 4 yards a pop. That was enough of a run game that Cincinnati had to respect BYU's ability to hand the ball to LJ Martin and expect him to move down the field. When they had to expect that opened up a little bit of the passing game. But what was kind of interesting to me watching this game is you hear so often you've got to run to set up the pass. You run, find success in the ground game, that sets up the play action pass game. What I saw from BYU is that they were trying to do that. They were trying to establish the run early, but it was once they got Kedon Slovis going and gained some yards through the air that is what really opened up the run game. It was the pass that seemingly set up the run game. So kind of backwards from traditional football 101. And maybe that's an important thing for Aaron Roderick and this BYU offense to take note of going forward. If you watched Zach Wilson and the New York Jets play the Chiefs last night, you saw kind of the same thing. Zach Wilson, he came out firing the ball. The Jets haven't done anything offensively. The pass game hadn't been good. The run game hadn't been good. The offensive line hasn't been good. Nothing has been good for the Jets. But last night against the Chiefs, they kind of threw away everything and did things differently. Zach Wilson threw the ball 39 times last night. Once he got going, once he got out of the pocket, once he found a little bit of rhythm, then there were some running lanes for Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook. BYU saw something very, very similar against Cincinnati, that last drive in the first half where BYU marched down the field in, I think it was 4 plays, 30 seconds, and scored a touchdown. You saw Kedon Slovis get cooking a little bit. He was finding guys down the field. He was pushing the ball down the field through the air. And all of a sudden, this Cincinnati defense that had been so set on stopping the run and making BYU one-dimensional, they were kind of on their heels. They were a little unprepared for that passing attack on that drive. coming out of halftime, it was the same story for Slovis and BYU. He continued to push the ball down the field, and that's what kind of opened up a few running lanes for Miles Davis. Welcome back, Miles Davis. That was really, really encouraging. And I think that maybe that's the game script for BYU's offense going forward. They know that Kedon Slovis has an accurate arm. They know he can make every throw that he needs to make. Get him going first. Make Slovis the priority first, and then figure out the run game. And LJ Martin has proven, I think, multiple times over the season that if he gets a little bit of space, he can break tackles, he can make guys miss, and he can shoulder the rushing load on his shoulders, even though he's just a true freshman. So I liked what I saw. That was really encouraging. Now, flipping sides, what did I see from the defense? I saw a defense that Jay Hill's going to talk about it, I would assume today, that he doesn't love bend, don't break. But that's what happened against Cincinnati. BYU bent a lot. They gave up a lot of yards, north of 400 yards. But they did not let the Bearcats into the end zone. And I saw a defense they were getting beat. They were getting beat because they were playing well, if that makes sense. They were getting beat by Emory Jones on the ground. They were getting pressure in the backfield, but Emory Jones, he found running lanes and he made things happen with his feet. Emory Jones had north of 100 yards on the ground. I mean, so many of Cincinnati's rushing yards and really total offensive yards were a result of BYU's pass rush, I guess, forcing Jones out of the pocket and linebackers not being there to backfill and to fit into gaps. When BYU plays man coverage, and they played a lot of man coverage, that opens up those running lanes for that quarterback, and Emory Jones found those running lanes again and again. But if you look at what made those running lanes, it was an aggressive defensive front from BYU. That's good. That's very good. Sometimes you tip your cap to Emory Jones. You say, hey, have all of your yards. You did great. But once they got into the red zone, BYU buckled down. The pass rush got a little bit more disciplined, and Cincinnati really struggled to put the ball into the end zone. So that was good. I was encouraged by what I saw from the defense. They've got to do a better job of stopping the run at large. And I think Jay Hill, that's not, he's not going to hide behind that. They did not play particularly well, but the things that beat the defense are fixable. The things that beat the defense were a result of not having your plan B in place, right? Plan A is get to the quarterback, and they did that. They were doing that very well. But plan B is, okay, if the quarterback, if you don't sack him, if you don't get to him in the backfield, he's going to move. They didn't do that particularly well. So I think that that's really what I see from the defense that needs to change and needs to change in a hurry. But overall, really optimistic, really excited for the future of where BYU is going in the second half of the season. Lots of things to talk about, but overall, I think you have to be really pleased with the effort of the Cougars. And of course, you're happy with a 4-1 record through the first 5 games of the season. Thank you so much for tuning into the Daily Dose. Subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, give them hell.